Amazing. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Chase Life with Kelly show. As you know, I am your host, Kelly Chase. So we have an incredible guest on the show with us today. As you all know, I always have incredible guests on the podcast, but I just love this little fate synchronicity. So I was reached out to by a woman named Lydia. She introduced this girl to me, and the girl literally lives 10 minutes away from me. And I just thought that was so cool. I was like, wait a second, you're in Atlanta too. So thought it was super cool. So we have a fellow Atlantan on the podcast. So if you are tuning in from Atlanta, you might actually know her. But yeah, so Kate Terentieva is the founder of Off the Record, a connection card game that revolutionizes how we communicate and build deeper, more impactful relationships. With a background as a creative and art director for some of the world's most iconic brands like WhatsApp, Calvin Klein, Converse, Justin Alexander, and Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, Kate combines her passion for creative innovation with her love of authentic connections through Off the Record. While the game is fun to play, its true mission is to offer a supportive and enjoyable way to turn small talk into meaningful connections that bring people closer together, which we all love. Obviously, that's why I have the podcast, because we want to go deeper. So, Kate, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kelly. It's amazing to be here. And it's so wild that you are also based in Atlanta. I'm still reeling off of that. What a small world.
I know, it's so small. I'm like, oh my God, like how do I find you know what? It's crazy. Like we probably have been in like the same event or like the same
Or like at the same restaurant at the same time. Yeah. You just never know.
Yeah, you never know. No, it's so cool. Okay, so I love knowing like people's stories because I always feel like there's a reason why you created Off the Record.
Yeah.
And if you want to take us back, you can get as vulnerable as you want, or as surface level as you want. So however you want to play that. But yeah, I definitely want people to just know who you are, who is the woman and the mind behind Off the Record, and take us through that journey.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the question. I appreciate you asking about the story. I have always been a very chatty kid growing up. And it was the girl during nap time at kindergarten, like everybody's trying to sleep. And I'm like, so I could talk to a wall, honestly. And I was always asking a lot of questions. And I think kids in general have like very few boundaries around conversations, positively and negatively at the same time. And then I noticed a shift, like as I was getting older, that conversations were getting significantly more surface level. And as an adult, you're kind of like expected to know the answer to everything, and asking questions suddenly became really like, oh, you're dumb because you don't know that. And so I just kind of noticed a shift in just the quality of conversations and how we approach them. And I noticed I was having a lot of anxiety around just like talking with people. And of course, that then just like worsened during the pandemic for me, especially. I was living in New York at the time, and it was like peak, George Orwell, 1984 territory, just really scary and really frightening. And not only were we very physically isolated from one another, just in general, like across the world, but also socially so isolated. And I think it made us all feel less connected personally, but ironically so, because we're so digitally connected to one another, and at that time especially. And so I was just noticing that I was having conversations even before the pandemic that would get like really superficial, and then they wouldn't really go anywhere, or that I would feel like I was spending time with people in my life, but like, how well do I actually know these people? What do I know about them besides their favorite celebrities, or where they're from, or what they do for work? Oh my God, one of my least favorite questions, what do you do? Like, how long do we want to be stuck in this? um, and so it gave me a lot of time with the pandemic to think about, am I the only one that's feeling really lonely and disconnected? Because on the internet, it seems like everybody's super happy and everybody's living this great life, but like, how much of a reality is that? And how much of that feeling of loneliness, or, feeling disconnected from people, is tied to the quality of our personal relationships and the quality of our conversations? I just started looking into it kind of out of an interest, like for fun, because I'm a Virgo and I like research and I own that. And then simultaneously, all of work went virtual as well. And I'm in advertising. I'm a creative director. That's my kind of my background. And I started asking questions to my clients, like over Zoom, about how to get to know them and understand who they are as people, so that I could understand their companies, kind of like what you're doing with me now. And I started writing these questions down. I didn't really know what I was doing with them. I just felt like maybe they could be a good reference point.
Mm.
And one of my clients really solidified a lot for me when they said, you need to do something with those questions. Meanwhile, like off work, I'm Googling, like, what is the loneliness epidemic? Am I the only one that's feeling kind of alone? And it was just like, oh my God, holy shit moment. Hopefully I can curse on here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was just a wow moment for me, where kind of the two worlds melded together. And I was like, who knew that I could use my skill sets as a creative director to like maybe help people feel more connected in their personal lives. And I kind of started finding a way to do that in a differentiated medium than the card games that we're typically used to. And that's kind of how Off the Record was born. I essentially found the kind of two major things that ultimately inspired the design of the game is that a third of our speech is made up of small talk. So it's not going anywhere, and it is how we connect and reconnect with people initially. But we're having meaningful conversations less than 50% of the time. And I think it's because we're stuck in the small talk zone and we don't know how to make that transition. And so I thought, well, why don't we create a tool that is, gamified, so it's fun and it's entertaining, but it truly teaches you how to build that habit of making the transition out of something surface level and lighthearted into something substantive, and so that we could actually move the needle forward in solving what I think is the real pandemic, which is superficial conversations. And that has been around longer than, the distance that we had created between each other with COVID. But yeah, that's kind of like the long-winded sort of story of how I was inspired to create Off the Record.
I love that. No, thanks for sharing. So I have her deck right here, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube, you can check it out. Okay, I'm just gonna pull like a random card.
Yeah.
So it has two questions on it. One of this random card. What are your five most used emojis? Don't cheat. And then the second question is, what missing emoji do you need the most? So is there like how you set this up? I was like, obviously I've looked at more than one of these cards, but I felt based on the few cards that I have pulled, is there one that is more of like that surface level and the other one is supposed to keep you like more of an open-ended, let's dive a little bit deeper?
Exactly. So I was watching your live of you unboxing it. You nailed it instantly. Like the first question at the very top is kind of that lighthearted opener. And you can use it in a way where, let's say you're connecting with somebody you don't know at all. And this is like the conversation starter to connect with them. Or perhaps there's a lull in the conversation and you need like a little support and you're like, I want to transition to another topic. You pull a card. The first question is that opener to the topic, and then the bottom question allows you to follow up and explore on a deeper level. And it puts you in the driver's seat of the conversation. So an issue that I was finding as somebody who loves these types of card games is that it was a little too forceful. It was like, what's your family trauma? And you're like, I don't know if I want to get into that now. And it was kind of awkward to like back out of it. It makes you look like you're hiding something, where it's just kind of like puts you in a corner. And I really wanted people to feel as vulnerable as they wanted to get. So you could use this at work, you could use it on a date, you could use it with a friend or family member, and you're in the driver's seat of how deep you want to go and where you want to take that conversation. But ultimately, over time, what it does is that it teaches you the habit of always having a way to continue and carry the conversation beyond something superficial and like surface level.
Right, absolutely. No, I love that. Yeah, because like, I mean, based on those two questions, like amazing. What missing emoji do you need the most? Okay, and if someone was like, if this emoji didn't exist, like a sad face, right? You could be like, okay, well, can you tell me more about that?
Exactly. So then it's like, it gives you that first follow up, which is always like very anxiety driven. You ask a question and you're like, while somebody's answering in the back of your head, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I need to find something else to like keep this conversation
Right.
going so this person doesn't think I'm boring. And like all of that is taking up headspace. And so you're not actively listening to the answer that somebody is giving you unless you're already super comfortable with doing that, which
Mhm.
most people just aren't, and that's okay. But yeah, so it then gives you that way to explore the topic deeper, and then you can take it wherever you want to go because now you're like, okay, I can do this. I got this. It kind of gives you
Yeah.
that little initial boost, you know?
I love that. Have you used this personally, like on a date?
I care. So I have 4 decks of like personal decks that I keep for myself. I have one in my bag. I have one in my car. I have one at home. And then I have one like on my desk so that in case I'm having client calls that like I use with clients. So I use it all the time. Like it's such a
Cool.
fun way to get to know people. I love doing it on dates because it's always the most kind of like stressful. It's a little like, oh, you want to like impress that person. You want to find something to talk about. But it's like little bit more of like a antsy setting. And then I've also used it like before at jobs or with colleagues or at work or something because sometimes the icebreakers is just like not good at these virtual happy hours at work. So
True.
what do you like to do in your free time? Like, okay, everyone likes to golf and they like to run, they like to spend time with their family. Like, let's get into something a little
Yeah.
deeper. I know you've got other hobbies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But okay, so what happens though? Like your answer, you're asking these questions and it does still feel like you're pulling teeth from, the person sitting across from you. It's like, okay, let me go through this whole deck so I can go through
Yeah, that's a good
four out of
question.
them.
I mean, honestly, I haven't heard any stories like that. And if anybody has those stories, like I would love to hear them because I think it helps us improve on a way to truly make this a solution. But most of the time, on average, people use like 3 to 5 cards before they shut the deck altogether and just push it aside. And they're like, now I got this. Like I can have a conversation on my own now about things that I want to talk about, things that matter, and things that are
Mm,
interesting and allow me to actually get to know the other person. So I've never really heard the extreme where someone's like, oh, I feel like I'm pulling teeth. But also, I think that also speaks to us as people is like we're pretty good at understanding when that person's just not our person. And that's
mm.
okay. Like if you
Right.
just feel like it's just not going where you want it to go or you feel like it's not a natural conversation, knowing that you tried to get it there, I think that's already a huge accomplishment.
Mhm.
But the reality is like I think I read a study about compatibility a while ago, and it says that we're actually only compatible with like 2% of the people that we meet. And that's
Mhm.
not just dating, that's like friendships and any other
Right.
type of relationships. So if you look at it that way, most of the people that you meet might not even be your people. And that's
Right.
okay.
That's okay. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. That's true. I feel like, what's that saying? Like, people are in your life for like a moment, a season, or a lifetime type of thing. And that's
Exactly.
that's very true. Okay, so how do you feel like these types of games bridge basically like cultural gaps and spark conversations in that regard too?
That's a good question. When you say cultural gaps, do you mean like between different countries, or do you mean cultural gaps like generational gaps
Maybe a
or
little bit of maybe a little bit of everything. Yeah, I think a little bit of everything because I
yeah,
mean, yeah, it can play into all of that, I guess. I mean, generationally for sure. I mean,
for
I
sure.
feel
Actually,
like
I have
that could
a
be difficult to, I don't know. It's so interesting. I mean, it's funny. I'm like, there was a conversation. I was on another girl's podcast like a year ago, and she just kind of like presenced the conversation for a second. And she was like, "Isn't it wild that I can have like the most vulnerable conversation with you right now? And I just met you." She goes, "But like you go and hang out with your best friends, and you probably haven't told them anything that you just told me." And I was like, 100%. I said, "But granted, I do have some like what you're saying, like that 2%, it's like I do have those people that I feel like and maybe this is I feel like this is everybody, or maybe you have to find those people or attract those people, but like everyone does have those people that you can feel emotionally safe with, and you can just open up and be yourself and be super authentically you without feeling like a judgment coming from the other person and stuff. And I don't know, I was like, well, maybe it's just like easier. We were kind of like thinking, we're like, maybe it's just easier because we don't know each other. So it's easier for us to
Mm.
like be vulnerable with each other because I don't have to see you again. Like I don't have to, kind of thing.
Yeah, or maybe that, when you're like on a podcast or something, it's also like you're coming to have a conversation with someone that ideally is going to be deeper. So it's like both parties are already pretty prepared that that's what's going to happen. And then typically somebody who has a podcast, they probably already have a personality type that's able to create a safe space for the other person to share. So I think it's just also the setting too. But yeah, I mean, bridging cultural gaps it's so it's so cool because I actually heard a story from Lydia, our mutual friend. Um, she took off the record with her on like a road trip. It was her fiance's niece, I believe, or some other kind of like teenage aged relative, and Lydia. And she was like, "Yeah, we're driving, and it's like a little awkward, and we're the two adults like having this conversation in the front seats, and then the teenage girl is like in the back just texting and like totally detached from us." And she said, just for kicks and giggles, she pulled a couple cards from off the record, and they started with her fiance like playing the game and trying to see if maybe it'll like encourage the girl to participate in the conversation. And after a while, she did. And then towards the end of the trip, she told Lydia, "Thank you so much, like for spending time to get to know me. I just really feel like I connected with you, and I really appreciate that you did that."
Mhm.
And she was like, "It's like funny because it's not like I really did it. I just like pulled some cards, and it just happened to somehow connect all of us." And so that's been a recurring story. So it'll be like somebody who's a little older bonding with someone younger, whether they're family or, relatives of some sort, where they previously felt like, especially with people that are like grandparents bonding with their grandchildren, they're like, I don't know what to talk about with them because they're just like on their phones, or they're talking about brat summer. What's brat summer? And they're like all this stuff, they're like, I'm giving up. I don't know what to talk about with them. And so it kind of gives permission to create these conversations and to find these moments and find common ground between people that, even if they're related to one another, they still think that they don't have. So
Mhm.
that's always like really touching for me to hear as like a founder that it did that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I think that generationally, I mean, I feel like I've been in situations like that, with family members, of course, too, younger, older, and I'm like, and then I have to kind of get in my podcast, like put my podcast hat on in a sense. And, my biggest thing too is like, uh, curiosity, right? Like that is like the main theme, it's like, okay, how curious can you get with someone? And, in my dating life, it's like I love when a man is curious about me. And
It's hot.
it's not those surface level conversations or talking about not I say like talking about other people. I don't mean like gossiping, just like, oh yeah, and my mom did this, and just story like creating or having storytelling around other people's lives that are a part of your life kind of thing. Like, oh, did you know
Yeah.
so and so like is pregnant, or did you know that so and so's mom is, just vacationing in Bahamas right now? I don't know. It's just like those like surface level, and it's like, why are we talking about other people? We are here to talk about like us, and like actually get to know each other, because eventually like we want to know if we're gonna get married and like whatever. Like, why are we talking about other people?
Yeah. I know it is. And then you walk away being like, what do I know about them other than the
Yeah,
fact that they have this friend and that friend is pregnant? And then
right,
it's
right,
like,
exactly.
yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
point. Actually,
yeah.
yeah.
So like, I mean, granted, I mean, a card deck like this would be super helpful. And like you said, just, to initiate conversations, get the conversation started, even with this card I pulled, like, and asking them, well, like, why do you feel like a sad emoji is like, your favorite, or that's something that we should add if it wasn't existing already, obviously. But we're like, why do you feel like are you sad all the time?
Like,
was like,
yeah, exactly. And you then can like get as deep as you want to get, or they can answer as surface level as they want to be and what they're comfortable with. So it doesn't like feel forceful in you pulling somebody's vulnerability out of them. It just gives both of you permission to have that conversation, however it is that you want to have and carry it.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. And, speaking to to Lydia's teenage relative, that is, I love the fact that she, thanked her for that. And I think, at the end of the day, no matter what age we are, it's like we all just want to be like heard and seen. And she
Yes.
probably was just sitting in the back seat, like, I have nothing in common with these two adults. And like, what are we going to talk about? This is so awkward. I'm just going to sit back here and like distract myself from being awkward,
Yeah.
and I just find that that's neat because it really helps, again, help someone not feel so unseen, and not heard, but not lonely too. Like,
Yeah, I think conversation is like the cornerstone of everything that we want in life as people, regardless of our beliefs, regardless of our backgrounds. Like, we just want relationships, we want love, we want families, we want happiness, we want to feel like we're part of something. And all of that starts with a conversation.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
when you talk to somebody, you you share things with one another. And when you share, that's where you really like emotionally bond and connect with them and you start forming then the building blocks of that relationship wherever it is that it's going. And so, it's really important to have those conversations. It's important to know how to ask really good questions. It's important to know how to make somebody understand that like you are actively listening to what they're saying and that they truly do feel heard. Yeah, and it takes work, to be able to communicate with somebody. So we're just trying to find a way to make it more fun. And
That's
while at the same time, like building those really good habits that we need in order to exist, because there's a reason why we were put on this planet with other humans.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay. I have like three questions just popped up in my head. Okay. So prior to the cards, like, okay, so people would confide in you, they'd come to you, and or you just knew how to, hold space and like direct conversations and everything. So like, where did that come from?
That's such a good question. I want to say like, oh, it's just part of my personality, but maybe some of that is true. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in an immigrant household. So I was already really different. And I was born in the US, but I lived in another country in Russia for the first 5 years of my life. And so when I moved back, I didn't speak English. I spoke a different language. And so I was having to figure out a way how to connect with other people who don't understand what I'm saying, and I don't understand what they're saying. And we have to find a common ground. So, like, from a literal perspective, I think maybe some of that really built up that skill set. But also, I'm an only child. Like, I was raised by a single parent, and so I was around adults all the time. And I'm like, adults are talking about these like really important things, and they have you kind of can see like as a kid when adults are talking that they talk very differently than kids talk. And so like you can tell there's like certain behaviors that are utilized or they're like working at communications. Whereas kids they're not working at communications. They just say whatever's on their mind. And I love that. As an adult, sometimes I'm like, damn, that was really crass to say, but like kids don't have these boundaries and they don't know cause and effect and they don't know consequences for saying certain things yet. They're kind of figuring that out. And adults are a little bit more like, oh, I want to say this, but I'm not going to say that because I feel like you can kind of see that like on their faces before even some of those happen. So I feel like I picked up on a lot of that just being around adults. And so socially, I had to learn how to fit in pretty quickly because I'm like from a different place. I'm living in a cultural bubble. My parents were raised in different places. I'm already having to kind of bridge gaps culturally and figure out how to connect with people that don't know anything about my life and I don't know anything about their life. And yeah, and then I think the other part of it is like I'm a Virgo. And so automatically there's this like I want to tell you my business. And I see it as an honor. So I'm like, I'm so honored that you shared this with me. And I just see it as like you felt comfortable and you told it to me. And I am grateful for you confiding in me, no matter what piece of information that may be. And and that's just kind of like my personality, I think, as well. So I do tend to form quite deep relationships with people, but even someone like me struggles with feeling like, oh my God, maybe I'm not really that interesting for this group of people, or maybe I'm going to be judged for some of the things I think or say based on what conversation is happening, or oh my God, I don't want to go to this party because I don't know anyone and it's just going to be small talk and we're just going to be talking about our jobs all day. And like, I don't want to do that. So I have some of those thoughts still, but for sure, having questions in my back pocket already makes me feel like so much more secure because I'm like, if anything, if this goes to shit, I know how to reel it back. I
Yeah.
know how to bring it back to something where we're actually talking about things that matter and I can feel walk away being like, I think I just made a new friend and I think I, know things about this person that I can recall besides, kind of the surface level stuff or God forbid things about other people in their life and we just spent 30 minutes talking about, your mom or your dad and we don't know anything about each other.
Right. That's true. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. That's neat that you were lived over in Russia for a while.
Yeah, it's cool. It gives you something to talk about for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's incredible. Okay, so for those who are like very insecure, very introverted, socially anxious, obviously these cards help. And what I was thinking is like, like for me, like I'm what am I trying to say? Like transitioning, right? Like
Hmm.
for me, like in my corporate job, I'm going and I'm speaking to my clients and I'm telling them all about the things. And then at the end of my like sales pitch per se, it's like, okay, I mean, I'm good at this, but like other people may not be. They come in there to do the job that they're tasked at, and then it's like, okay, I like delivered what I was supposed to, and they don't have that way to transition to be like my follow-up question is, or if I forget what else I need to say, I'll be like, so how did you start your business, or like where like did you always want to be an attorney, like what is your background, like what's your story? And so it starts, and then they'll go, and then later on they'll be like, well, how long have you been at this company? And then it starts another like, what's your life story kind of conversation. But some people don't
Yeah.
know how to make that transition. Otherwise, it would be just being like they deliver the stuff and then they like sit there like, okay, well, like thanks for having me, like thanks for your time. Or maybe they do want to have like a conversation, but they're not necessarily going to have like a box of cards with them, if they're in this like
Yeah.
professional meeting. I don't know if you have like any advice to help them, like what that question would be versus them like giving this spiel, this very like professional spiel, and then them being like, so like, what's your favorite emoji? Like just like out of nowhere,
Oh,
just like
that's a good
a
question.
random.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't know that I'm kind of like you where like it's so just it's already in
Yeah,
the back of my head somewhere, but also like I work in communications. So it's like you're always have that brain on. Although I too have experienced people that, for instance, are trying to have a conversation with me or pitch something to me, and then um, you know, then they'll just like end it and they don't know how to now bounce it back into my court and like have
right,
that. Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe uh even if you don't have some random oddball icebreaker in your back pocket, even just asking the person if they like, oh, hey, yeah, I know that was a lot of information. We just talked about a lot. Like, did you have any questions or is there something that you wanted to learn more about? Or is there a reason why you wanted to speak to me about this thing? And even that alone, picking out something from that can inspire a next question that you may have for them and kind of like help you
yeah.
find. So it's a little bit more of like a direct transition, but I think if somebody is really uncomfortable with finding what to say, sometimes instead of, you know, grabbing a question from over here, it might just be, okay, how can I use whatever we just talked about now to transition to something else and take a question from what you just immediately discussed, whatever that topic is, and find some common ground with that person. Like you may be a salesperson, they may be an attorney, but like there's probably
Yeah,
something there, you know?
exactly. Oh yeah, yeah. There generally is. But yeah, it's just like I have found, like, I mean, granted, there will be times that I do get stumped and I'm like, okay, like that was it. That's all I needed to say. Okay, that's it. And then I will ask them, like, did you have any questions, follow up questions or anything like that? Or, reach out to me if you have follow up questions. And like, that'll be it. And I don't need to sit there and like take up any more of their time. But I just was wondering, in case anyone listening were like, well, yeah, you guys are like, that's what you do. Like, that's your thing. Well, I'm not like that. Like I'm insecure. I have like social anxiety. Like I can't, I'm not extroverted sounding like you ladies are. So just wanted to see. But that was a good tip.
I
Question.
mean, to your point, like it is the last thing they're going to remember. So it's actually like really important because it's like going to Trader Joe's. Like there's literally a reason why they're so nice to you at the register and they make sure you feel leaving Trader Joe's being like, I want to come back here. Oh my God. I love Brandon at the cash register. They are actually trained to do that with you. Like that's literally a part of their employee training is they have to have this interpersonal, slightly personal interaction with you. And that always starts with like the most boring thing. Did you try these frozen dumplings already? Oh, you haven't? I love them. And then they find a way to like do something else. What are you cooking for dinner tonight? Da, 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 da. And then you walk away being like, oh my God. And then the guys, obviously, they're a little flirtatious sometimes. So then you'd be like, I have to come back to the Buckhead Trader Joe's because Eric at Buckhead Trader Joe's was so cute and he was so sweet. Oh my God. And then it just makes you feel more like you walked away with something positive from that interaction. So to your point, it actually is really important.
Yeah.
So I think if somebody does want to build like a good career in that specific type of area where you're pitching things to people and then you have to figure out how to like bring them back into a conversation with you,
Right.
remembering that it is the last thing they're going to think about and it
Mm.
could impact whether or not they reach back out to you versus someone else who made them feel super welcome and made them have them some sort of conversation they wouldn't have thought about having. Um, yeah, it's something to consider for sure.
Yeah. And now I'm gonna be like, those people were just being fake at Trader. Oh,
Sorry, that's like a little trade
ruined
secret.
it. That's hilarious. No, I did have one woman one time. She was like just complimenting my groceries, and then she was like, "What are you gonna make? Like, how are you gonna prepare this stuff?" And I was like, "Really? You want to like take advice from me? Okay, like, yeah, I'm actually gonna like saute this and blah blah blah." But I thought she was genuinely curious. Now it's
I
ruined.
mean, listen, she could have been.
She
She
could have
totally
run.
could have been, Kelly. But yeah, no,
But hey, she made a lasting impact. I'm telling her story. There you
she did her
go.
job and she did it well. And you probably came back after that.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. How did you get into communications? Like, how'd you know that was the field you wanted
Um,
to go into? Or did you fall into it?
yeah, it kind of found me. I was not looking for it. I had a Tumblr blog that was quite popular. It was my teenage diary. And at the time, unlike today, virality literally meant nothing unless you were a reporter or already some sort of celebrity. I wasn't. I was like a 13, 14-year-old kid writing this from my mom's
Wow.
computer and it was a totally anonymous because I was like, oh, I watched Read It and Weep on Disney Channel once. And I was like, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have a little personal diary and I'm just going to change all the names. It'll be fine. I was like, yeah, you need to change the context too. Because if you're writing about real events, just because you change the names does not mean people are not going to know what's happening. And so, yeah, and I had that for a few years and then I transitioned to like some sort of lifestyle blog or fashion blog in college and I was designing Tumblr themes and it was just fun for me. It wasn't anything I thought was going to be a career. I was first set on medicine and then I was like, I can't pass physics, so we're going to need to think of something else. And I speak quite a few languages and so I was like, oh, law, like easy. I guess we'll just do that. And my senior year of college, a friend of mine we're no longer really in contact, but I will forever be grateful to him. He uh, introduced me into some competition in the journalism school in college. And he was like, we need somebody that understands design. And I was like, I don't know who you're talking to because it's not me. And he was like, no, I like seeing the stuff that you're doing online, and I think you could be really good at it. And it was a 24-hour competition. We were building a real campaign for a real client. This was not anything I knew going into it. I was totally blind. And I just felt really connected to that. I felt like I knew what I was doing, even though I didn't. I've never seen Mad Men at this point. I had no clue what advertising was, no idea. And I just felt like I got this. And we ended up winning. And my friend was like, here's a list of grad schools. Like, you need to look into this as a career. And he's like,
Oh,
this is a really small industry, but like, I think you have a gift. Like, you're the only person here who didn't study this. And I was like, okay. And then I ended up pursuing art direction, and starting to work in the advertising industry. And yeah, and my interest was always like human behavior. Like, I wanted to understand how people because it's also how they buy.
right.
And I started studying independently, like psychology and like neuromarketing, and trying to understand the effects of advertising on the mind and how we process all that information. And then come to find out that's apparently like connected to then me building a card game on how like to help people have conversations. So yeah, it was kind of a complete and total divine accident, I guess I would call it. But I definitely did not go looking for it. I wouldn't have even known that this was a field that existed.
Yeah. Do you work for someone or is this like your business?
Yeah, so I have my own kind of creative consultancy that I do in addition to off the record, but obviously my goal is to like make off the record my full-time thing. But yeah, so right now I'm kind of doing both, and it's it's interesting because they kind of feed into one another. On one side, I'm figuring out how can a brand, especially most of my clients are startups or small businesses, so how can they speak to a consumer? Because at that stage of the business, they
Mm-hmm.
need customers. You can't get away with things that Coca-Cola is doing or Apple's doing and push, millions of dollars into a Super Bowl advertisement just to stay relevant and just so people keep you top of mind over maybe a more innovative solution that's kind of like up and coming. A startup has to have the customer in mind first. They can't prioritize their own pockets. They have to care about the consumer. And so that's where it's really helpful to have that knowledge of like human behavior and how people think about purchasing and how they want a brand to have a conversation with them, because that's what they
Mm-hmm.
want. And so, yeah. And then, on off the record side, it's like, okay, now how do we actually help people have better conversations and strengthen their relationships with one another? So yeah, it's kind of an interesting turn of events.
Yeah, yeah. But it's neat when you are doing because I feel like I was gonna say it's neat when the multiple things that you might do are in alignment with each other and or there is some synchronicity. I mean, like for me, my corporate job, like, when I was going back into the 9 to 5 space, I think, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but like as an entrepreneur, when you have to get a real job again, quote unquote, it's like you feel like you failed. You feel like people
Mm,
are like, oh, like whatever they were doing must not have worked out. Like, why would she need to get a real job if she had a successful business, right? And
sure.
so when I first like stepped into it, or not when I first stepped into it, but like I was begrudgingly needing to get a job. Like I was like, no, like I know I can make, certain things work. And at the time it was just things just weren't working for me for multiple different reasons. But I've now been at this company for over 2 years and
Mm, hmm
things that I do, like it has really like kind of reflected back to me like what I'm really good at. I'm good at connecting with people. I'm good in person. I'm good at having conversations with people. I'm just good making other people feel seen and heard. And again, like I said, like have yes, I'm going to give them the business spiel, but I'm also going to say like, how did you become an attorney? How did you get into this? Like, was this a childhood dream when you were 4 years old watching the Bill Cosby show? Like, how did you become an attorney? And then it just spirals. And then we go into like such longer conversations with that. And I'm like, I feel like that is how I've made my impression and have connected with them. Like, oh, this is a girl that actually cares. Because I do. Like, I love learning people's stories. So it's like, I'm genuinely asking because I'm so like my whole life, like I wanted to be, like a teacher, baby doctor, actress. And then it was kind of discouraged, but I like get it. Like I understood why those things were discouraged. And so going to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to be. So, but now it's like I feel like things have come full circle in a lot of ways. I mean, I am like teaching. Obviously, I've been on a reality show, but I have a podcast. I have a show that so I'm like I'm acting. And then like the whole baby doctor thing, I'm healing, I'm helping people. So it really has come full circle to me. But I don't know where I was going with that. But just like well, where was I going with that conversation? I do that sometimes. Oh my God. I have no idea
I
what was
think you
that.
maybe when you started saying that, like, you felt as though maybe people thought that you were like failing because you went to a corporate job. And I think maybe it's because oftentimes we identify ourselves like as our jobs and like that's our
Right.
identity. And that can also be like you having a corporate job or you having a business, like both of those things, it's not like somebody's going to judge you for having one or the other, but like you being like, oh my God, this thing like unlocked all of these really interesting skill
Mhm.
sets within me or qualities within me that maybe I wasn't appreciating because I was too focused on the fact that like, oh my God, people are going to judge me because I'm going back to corporate. But look how
Right.
much it has
Oh,
unlocked within you. And I think that's so amazing, but it reinforces perhaps maybe that's why we often talk about what we do because we just feel like that's who we are and that's the
yeah.
only part of our identity that we think is valuable enough to society that we
Yeah.
prefer to focus on that over other qualities within us as a multifaceted person.
So true. That's very true. Yeah, absolutely. I could see that. I probably wasn't. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, 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 for sure. Yes. And the synchronicities of everything. Like, I feel like I'm
Mm.
kind of like, I'm able with my job, with the podcast, I'm doing public speaking. I'm actually signed up to do a speaking gig at the end of this year with people in my industry.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of cool, like how the worlds are coming full circle. And, I don't know where this is going to lead. I don't know where anything is going to lead. People ask, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I'm like, I don't know, on a yacht in Croatia. Like, I mean, really? I don't know. I want to be married with a kid. Like, I mean, where God's plan is for me to go, really. But I obviously just want to be happy. And I think that the more that you can lean into things that light you up and like you said, like just bringing those ideas together. I think it's like super cool, like how you're helping brands to speak to their audience while also helping humans speak to other humans. And
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I think that is super aligned for you, um, and what the world needs and needs, you know?
Yeah, I was also kind of struggling too because kind of some of the things that you just mentioned, I resonate with a lot. Like I'm very good at being a creative director and good at my job, but I've always also felt like there's something, I've been that type of person. Like I just want to change the world. Like I understand that
Mhm.
it's delusional and I recognize that that's woo woo, but that's who I am. Like I just always wanted to find different ways like to solve people's problems. And like I think I recently realized that I was placing so much emphasis on advertising and specifically being a creative director, like my whole identity. And it was actually Lydia who was one of the people in my life who was like, I think you need to rethink that. And like you have something like you're building like off the record has like something in it that I think that is ultimately also what makes you special as a creative director. And like, you need to find that connection. And I was
Mm.
exploring, and I just felt like I was focused too much on, yeah, I wanted to be this like creative direction authority, and I wanted to be this like advertising, professional and person of influence in that realm. And after a while, I just kind of realized that advertising is actually so problematic in so many ways. And I was thinking about like, what would I want to do? And I felt like for me, it's always been, I just want to help people. Like that's why I got into the industry. And I felt like it kind of sold me a Santa Claus for adults in a lot of ways. And I bought it. And in reality, does it actually bring people together? Does advertising actually do that? Or does it just like line a brand's pockets? And I was like, I think I would really want to go into some sort of reform of the advertising system by starting conversations around that. And it's just so crazy because I didn't really realize the connections of all of that until you said it. And you were like, all of these things in your life are all so interconnected between one another.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a reason why everything unfolds the way it unfolds. And if you go even all the way back somewhere in your childhood, some of those seeds may have been already planted. And I think it's just so miraculous, like how everything in your life, even the things that are so negative or unfavorable, rather, and you look back, it just makes sense based on
Yeah.
like where you are now. I don't know. Something
Mhm.
about what you said
Okay.
there just made it like in my mind.
Came together.
I don't know why, but it's just like, yeah, you were talking about all of these different qualities within you that you ended up realizing and connecting together. And I was like sitting here kind of thinking about that with regards to
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. I really think it's a thing. Like, I don't know, like you're true. Granted, someone recently was like, no, that's like whenever you say like what you're gonna be like when you were younger, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily is what you're meant to be when you're older. But I'm like, okay, well, although I said I wanted to be a teacher, I'm not technically a teacher. I have found a way to be like a teacher. I'm teaching, I've been a coach before. I'm helping people this way. I'm educating people online. Like I'm not your
Right.
traditional teacher, but I'm still teaching, that kind of thing. So it's like manifested, like law of attraction manifestation. It's always like this or something better. Like you're gonna
True.
but it's going to be this or something better. And
Oh my
sometimes, you're
God.
like, you're manifesting things and you're like, well, this wasn't at all what I wanted because, something happened that was negative, challenging, a heartache, a hardship, that kind of thing. And you're like, what the hell? Like, this isn't at all what was, what I was looking for. Like,
Yeah.
but then in hindsight, it's like, well, I had to endure that challenge in order to become this better person or to go down this route. Sometimes like obviously when people go, through losses and like deaths and whatnot, and it's like, okay, like how can you maybe you start a nonprofit because your brother passed away from
Mm.
X, Y, and Z, illness. And okay, so like because of like obviously you want your brother to still be alive, but because of that, he gave you purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like sometimes you have to go through those things in order to really figure out where your true north is and like what true skills and talents and abilities that you've been gifted and like how to actually use them. Because I think many
Right.
people are just kind of like floating on autopilot too out there. And they just, I mean, that's what I did probably the first 10, 12 years of my corporate life was just working jobs that didn't really like, I just felt like I was on a constant hamster wheel, like never really,
Mm.
it was just very autopilot driven and just showing up for a paycheck, hanging out with my friends at work, that kind of thing, but I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like a connection to it
Mm. Mm-hmm.
till later on, when I first started, like not first but like a few years into like coaching, when people were like, you're like changing my life and like you're actually creating impact. And then I was like, okay, like I've been in corporate America for 10 years. I've never heard anybody tell me that. So I need to lean into this like coaching thing. And so I did. And that's in 2017 when I left my first corporate job. Like I was like, I'm gonna just be an entrepreneur and like figure this out for a little while. And obviously I've hit road bumps along the way, but again, it's all led me to a great place. I feel like I'm in a really superb place. I mean, I had like 5 different, meetings today and it was great. Like I got home at like 4 o'clock and I was just like, I feel like I'm on top of the world. Like I gotta keep going right now. Like I mean, granted, yeah, do I get tired, because I am meeting with people. It can be draining, of course, but I think that when you're confident in what you do, you know your purpose, your mission, it actually can light you up. Like there will be times when I am I don't know, like I'm feeling like I'm in a funk or something, and I will either like create content or I will go and do like an Instagram live and just communicating with people on my live. Like intentionally, I'll be like, okay, I'll just pop on for like 10 minutes, and like an hour goes by, and I'm like, oh my God, I just did like an hour live at 9 o'clock at night with like my audience. And it just
Oh,
because it like I don't know, just like communicating. It's connection. Like I just
yeah.
like talking to people or talking to myself.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that you would have like a successful podcast and that you were able to create a space also for people to listen to you or share kind of like a conversation with someone else on the show with your audience in some way too, you know? So all of that makes sense. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And since that even the kind of road bumps and stuff, there's always a reason for them. And at the time, it may seem like, that's not what I wanted to happen. And then you'll look back like a few years later, you'll be like, thank God that
Right.
is exactly how things went. And so, yeah, sometimes it's just not meant to be understood in the moment. And that's so confusing to us as people because we just need to have an explanation for everything, you know?
Mhm. Oh yeah, we do. Otherwise, it creates its own story about it, and that's like really difficult in the date. I would say in the dating space, that I feel like that's the hardest thing. It's like, you don't hear from, you go on a date and then you don't hear from the person and your head's like, well, is there something wrong with me? And it's like, no, the
Right.
guy's like literally putzing around. He just no clue where he's completely disinterested. It is not about you. Like, just keep on moving. Like there's those,
Yeah,
but our
totally.
brains do that. Our brain, I'm just going to start interjecting my brain with like questions to distract myself.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
no, that's amazing. So where do you see off the record going? Like what would you ideally want to do with your brand?
That's a really good question. I already have an idea for deck two.
Ooh.
I won't say exactly what it is, but I will say it is an arena that no other card game has touched. Like, in fact, they refuse to. But I think we need to know how to have conversations about this topic because it really affects the quality of our lives and it affects us as human beings. Um, but I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I just really want people to have a fulfilled, happy life. And more than we understand, that is connected to other people. It
Yeah.
has to do with our relationships with other people. Because, like I said, I mean, absolutely there is a reason why we were not put on this planet by ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and that we were put on the planet to share that planet with other human beings. We work with people, we date other people, we start families with people, we have families already, parents and grandparents, and there's so much of our lives is connected to people. We talk about people a lot, whether that's like positively, negatively. They're just every single aspect of our lives has to do with people in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's important to find a way to feel connected to people and not just like coexist, but really find those with whom you have common ground or have conversations with people that you wouldn't assume to have anything in common because maybe your worlds are so different or your beliefs are so different. But there's like, even if it's like politics, for instance, things that about economics or healthcare are like totally nonpartisan issues. They have to do with us as human beings. And there's totally ways for us to have conversations about things like that concern us in ways that it's not like you're judging someone else or that you're anxious about what you have to say about the topic, um, or you feel like whatever you have to say is not interesting. I just want people to understand that like you and your life experiences are interesting and they are fascinating to somebody. They may not be fascinating to everyone, and that's okay. They shouldn't be, but
Right.
they are going to be appreciated by the right people. And part of that is you giving yourself permission to share
Mm.
that and not feeling like you have to perform or make yourself smaller in order for someone else to feel comfortable. It's kind of a mutual thing where you create a safe space for someone else to share their story. They create a safe space for you to do the same. And that exchange of information, it's truly an honor to
Hmm.
hear someone else's story and to be able to be in the room with somebody who's willing to share their life experiences with you. That's something that we don't do with everyone. And so if you establish that connection with somebody, it's like a gift. And, so understanding how to really like cultivate that and see it from that perspective, because we have our whole life to live with other people, maybe not directly in the same space, but like on the planet.
Yeah.
So and it's just like relationships and connections, it's at the core of everything that we want. And at the core of everything that we want is happiness. And so it's directly correlated to the quality of our life and the quality of our happiness and fulfillment. And so a bit of an ambitious goal perhaps, but um off the record is really just about helping people find common ground and helping each other understand that like we are interesting
Yeah.
and you have things to share and you matter and your story matters and your thoughts matter. You have them for a reason. And it's really just solving, I think, for what really is like the ultimate pandemic, as I like to call it. And that's superficial conversations and just giving yourself the permission to talk about things of substance. Because when we talk about things of substance, and not only does it make us happier as people, does it make us feel connected to one another, but it's also where if you are somebody that wants to change the world or impact the world on a bigger scale, it's literally where idea reform happens. It's where society change is born. It's where ideologies are born. It's where, a means of governing something or building something. It's where business ideas are born. So, like, these conversations are important across every single aspect of your life, regardless of what you want to do, but just merely even the quality of your existence as a person.
Absolutely. I love that. Very well said. Very well said. I agree. I agree. Well, where can people find you? And
Yeah.
don't
So,
grab a copy of these cards.
yes. You can find a copy of Off the Record on playofftherecord.com. We also have an Instagram at Play Off the Record. We'll send everything to Kelly, so I'm sure she'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
But just reiterating in case, yeah, and it's a safe game to play with anybody in your life. There's no spicy questions. So if you wanted to bond with a team member, a client, or a date, or even a family member that you just really want to reconnect with, or a
Yeah.
friend that you had a breakup with and you want to reconnect with that friend, it's pretty safe in every conversation that you want to have. So that's the really nice thing too. There's
Yeah.
no weird, dirty questions.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're good. I love them. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your creativity. I mean, I think this is amazing and just your wisdom around it. Like, you're right. The world is definitely in a bit of a pandemic. We are connected through our phones, but the conversations, I mean, you go to a party and everyone's sitting on their phones and you're like,
Yeah.
hello, talk to me.
Yeah. And I'm grateful that you're, having these conversations for people to listen to and providing a safe space for people to share their stories as well. I think that's so important. So thank you for having me too.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks. And everyone, remember to just rate, review, subscribe to the show, all the things, and check out Kate's brand, Off the Record. Yay!